Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.
The smell of burning plastic and wet ash hit me the moment I rolled down my truck window. I put the vehicle in park at the end of my long gravel driveway. I bought this 20-acre property in the Blue Ridge Mountains 6 months ago. As a commercial zoning consultant based in Atlanta, my days are spent arguing with city planners and municipal boards. The A-frame cabin was supposed to be my absolute quiet zone. Instead, there were 8 unfamiliar cars parked haphazardly across my front lawn, their tires sinking deep into the expensive winter landscaping. A massive, uncontained bonfire was roaring dangerously close to the dry tree line. The heavy bass of a portable speaker rattled the cabin's custom glass windows. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the freezing mountain air. I didn't shout to announce my arrival. I just walked past 2 guys I had never seen before, stepped onto my wraparound cedar deck, and yanked the power cord for the speaker out of the exterior wall outlet. The sudden silence made the crackling of the bonfire sound deafening. A chorus of drunken groans echoed from the dark yard. Sitting on the railing, wearing my expensive wool throw blanket like a cape, was my 22-year-old sister, Chloe. Chloe had always been the family's professional freeloader. My parents subsidized her apartment in the city, covered her car insurance, and aggressively defended her terrible decisions under the guise that she was just finding herself. I had never given her the address to this cabin, let alone the access codes, but I had made the mistake of leaving my spare key ring on the kitchen counter during a family dinner 3 weeks ago. She must have copied the physical deadbolt key. When Chloe saw me standing on the deck, her initial shock vanished in a second. She didn't apologize. Her posture immediately shifted into a highly rehearsed, arrogant smirk. "Harper? Seriously?" Chloe groaned, rolling her eyes as if I had just rudely interrupted her vacation. "You couldn't even text before showing up? You're killing the vibe." I looked past her, through the open front door. My custom leather sofa had been dragged halfway into the kitchen. The hardwood floors were caked in dried mud. Empty beer cans and trash bags were piled against the stone fireplace. How long have you been up here, Chloe?" I asked. "About a month," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "My lease in the city ended and Mom said it was completely fine if I stayed here for the summer to shoot content for my channel. You never even use this place anyway. It's basically a family home." "It's not a family home," I told her. "It's my property. You have exactly 30 minutes to wake your friends up, put out that fire, and get everyone off my land before I call a tow truck." A few of the people on the porch shifted nervously, clearly ready to leave, but Chloe didn't flinch. She reached into her oversized flannel shirt, pulled out a crumpled envelope, and slapped it onto the wooden railing. "Actually, Harper, we aren't going anywhere," Chloe said, her tone shifting into a smug armchair lawyer. I shined my flashlight on the envelope. It was a credit card statement, officially addressed to Chloe at my cabin's exact rural highway lockbox. "I knew you'd try to pull a power trip, so I did my research," Chloe bragged, clearly repeating a script she had seen on TikTok. "We've been living here for exactly 32 days. I received my mail here. I changed my permanent address. Under state tenancy laws, we have established squatters' rights. We are legally your tenants now." My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from our mother. Chloe had clearly warned her I was here. "Harper, please don't make a scene. Chloe just needs a place to figure her life out. Just let her stay for the summer. Be a good sister. You can't just throw her out into the cold. They really thought they had me boxed in." Chloe thought she had discovered a brilliant legal loophole to steal a free vacation home, and my parents were perfectly happy to let me foot the bill for the property damage just to keep their favorite child out of their own house. "If you want us out," Chloe continued, practically glowing with unearned confidence. "You can't just kick us out or shut off the water. That's an illegal self-help eviction. You have to formally serve us with a 30-day notice and take us to civil housing court. Mom's lawyer friend said the county eviction backlog is at least 6 months long, so we're staying until winter. Deal with it." She looked at me, waiting for me to scream, threaten her, or lose my temper. And she wanted a fight she could record on her phone. I looked at the piece of mail. Then I looked at the massive bonfire burning less than 50 feet from dry timber, and the 8 cars parked over my fragile septic field. Arguing with an entitled 22-year-old who gets her legal education from the internet is a waste of time. "Okay, Chloe," I said simply. She blinked, surprised by how easily I backed down. Her smug smile widened. "Glad you're finally being reasonable. To close the door on your way out." I turned around, walked down the driveway, and got back into my truck. I didn't drive back to Atlanta to hire an eviction lawyer. I drove 10 miles down the mountain to the nearest town, rented a motel room, and opened my laptop. Chloe was right about residential tenancy laws, but she had no idea how I had zoned the property. I didn't need to file a civil eviction. I just needed to wait until 5 a.m. The motel room desk was sticky, but the Wi-Fi worked. I didn't need a high-speed connection or a lawyer. I just needed my laptop and the county's Geographic Information Systems, GIS, public portal. Chloe's entire defense rested on a fundamental misunderstanding of the law. She thought establishing residency converted any property dispute into a slow, civil court matter. If I filed a standard eviction notice on Monday morning, she and her friends could drag the process out for 6 to 8 months, living rent-free while destroying my home. Oh, but I don't work in residential tenancy. I work in commercial zoning and municipal code enforcement. I pulled up the original land use permits for my 20 acres. The cabin sits directly above a protected mountain watershed. Because of the strict ecological zoning in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the property is legally permitted for a maximum occupancy of 4 people, operating on a fragile, custom-engineered closed-loop septic system. When I drove up to the cabin earlier, now I counted at least 12 people. They had parked heavy SUVs directly on top of the underground septic leach field. They had also built a massive, uncontained bonfire less than 50 feet from the timberline during a county-wide seasonal burn ban. Squatters' rights protect you from a landlord changing the locks. They do not protect you from the local government when you turn a protected watershed into an environmental biohazard. I downloaded the permits. I drafted a formal emergency hazard complaint, attached the photos I took of the illegal fire and the cars parked over the septic grid, and hit send to County Dispatch at 1:30 a.m. At 5 a.m., the mountain road was pitch black. I led the convoy up my gravel driveway. Behind my truck was a marked county sheriff's cruiser, and behind that, a white utility truck from the Blue Ridge Department of Environmental Health. The flashing red and blue strobe lights cut through the heavy morning fog. Or the bonfire was a smoldering pit of trash. I didn't knock. I used my master key, unlocked the deadbolt, and pushed the front door open. The smell hit us instantly. Stale beer, sweat, and the sharp, sickening odor of raw sewage backing up into the foundation. Deputy Miller stepped past me into the living room. He didn't shout. He just took out his heavy metal flashlight and hammered the casing against the stone fireplace. 3 sharp metallic clangs echoed like gunshots. People started groaning or pulling blankets over their heads. A guy on the floor bolted upright, his eyes wide when he saw the uniform. Chloe stumbled out of the hallway. She was wearing my expensive silk bathrobe. She squinted against the harsh beams of the deputy's flashlights. When she saw me standing near the door, her groggy confusion morphed immediately into rage. She grabbed her phone from a side table, hit record, and shoved the camera toward us. "Harper, are you insane? You can't just bring cops in here," Chloe shouted, her voice shrill. "I told you last night. I have mail. We have squatters' rights." She turned the camera toward Deputy Miller. "Officer, This is an illegal self-help eviction. You can't remove us without a court order from a judge. It's a civil matter." Miller didn't flinch at the camera. He kept his flashlight aimed at the muddy floor. "You're right, ma'am," the deputy said calmly. "We do not handle residential evictions. Law enforcement cannot forcibly remove established tenants without a signed writ of possession from the civil court." Chloe lowered the phone slightly. A smug, triumphant smile spread across her face. She looked at me, radiating pure entitlement. "Did you hear that, Harper?" Chloe scoffed, crossing her arms. "The cops just told you to back off. Now get out of my house before I press charges for trespassing." My phone buzzed. A text from our mother. "Chloe just called me crying." "And did you seriously call the police on your own sister? Call them off right now." I put my phone on silent and slid it back into my pocket. "I heard him," I said. I stepped aside, pulling the front door wide open. A man in a heavy canvas jacket and steel-toed boots walked into the cabin. He held a clipboard in one hand and a high-powered flashlight in the other. He wasn't carrying a badge or a gun. He was carrying the full authority of the county municipal code. "Chloe," I said, "this is Mr. M. Vance from the Department of Environmental Health. He isn't here for an eviction." Chloe frowned. "Then why is he here?" "Because you parked 8 heavy vehicles directly over a Class 3 rural septic drainage field," Mr. Vance stated, clicking his pen. The weight of the tires compacted the soil and crushed the PVC distribution pipes. Combine that with a dozen people overusing a system rated for 4, and it failed. Vance pointed his flashlight toward the hallway. "You have raw sewage actively leaking into the mountain groundwater." Chloe stared at him. "Okay, so call a plumber. Why are the cops here?" "Because it's not a plumbing issue," Vance said. He pulled a bright orange sticker from his clipboard, peeled the backing off, and slapped it directly onto the glass of the front door. "Condemned. Do not enter. By order of the County Health Department." Chloe looked at the sticker, then back at the deputy. "Wait. Oh, what does that mean?" "Condemned?" Chloe repeated. The smug smile was completely gone. She looked at the bright orange sticker on the glass, then at the inspector. "You can't do that. It's just a clogged toilet. We have residency." Mr. Vance clicked his pen. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man reading a municipal checklist. "When you park multiple heavy vehicles over a rural septic leach field, you crush the subterranean PVC distribution pipes," Vance stated. "The system has failed. Raw human waste is currently backing up into the foundation and leaching into a protected mountain watershed. This is a Class A biological hazard. The property is legally unfit for human habitation." Chloe blinked. The TikTok videos hadn't covered environmental zoning. She turned to me, her voice shrill. "Then fix it, Harper. You're the owner. The law says you have to provide a habitable dwelling. Call a plumber right now." "I will fix it," I said, leaning against the wooden door frame. "But replacing a crushed septic grid requires commercial excavation, soil testing, and county permits. The process takes at least 4 weeks. Until the county signs off on the repairs, this house is legally classified as a toxic site." Deputy Miller unclipped his radio. The heavy rustle of his uniform made the room go completely still. "Which brings us to why I am here," Miller said, projecting his voice down the hallway. A guy who had been sleeping on the ruined leather sofa sat up, or rubbing his face. 2 girls near the fireplace stopped whispering. "I am not here to execute a civil eviction," Miller announced. "I am here to enforce a county health mandate. As of 5:15 this morning, nobody is legally permitted to remain inside this structure. If you do not vacate the premises immediately, you are no longer squatters. You are committing criminal trespass in a condemned biohazard zone." He pulled a pair of heavy metal handcuffs from his belt. "Well, you have exactly 10 minutes to gather what you can carry," Miller said. "Anyone still inside this cabin or on this property after 10 minutes is leaving in the back of my cruiser." The word arrest hit the room like a physical blow. The guy on the sofa didn't argue. He didn't ask Chloe for permission. He grabbed a duffel bag from the floor, shoved his boots on, and bolted toward the door. "Wait, guys, stop!" Chloe yelled, spinning around as the cabin erupted into chaos. "They're bluffing. It's a civil matter. I have a piece of mail. Don't let her do this." "I'm not catching a criminal record over a broken toilet, Chloe," a girl in a gray hoodie snapped, pushing past her with an armful of clothes. "You said this was your sister's place. You didn't say we were going to get arrested." Within 3 minutes, the loyalty of Chloe's friends completely evaporated. The front door swung open and shut violently as people rushed out into the freezing mountain fog. Desperate to avoid the deputy's gaze, Chloe stood frozen in the center of the muddy living room, still wearing my silk bathrobe. The illusion of her free summer party house had shattered. My phone buzzed. It was my mother calling again. I answered and put it on speakerphone. "Harper!" my mother screamed through the tiny speaker, her voice thick with panic. "Chloe's friends are texting her that the police are throwing them out. What are you doing? She is a resident." "You are acting like a monster." "I didn't throw her out, Mom," I said, watching Chloe tremble in the cold air rushing through the door. Chloe established herself as the primary legal resident. Then she hosted an unpermitted gathering and parked heavy SUVs on my leach field, crushing the plumbing. The county condemned the house for biological contamination. There was a sharp silence on the line. "The initial estimate for a full commercial septic excavation is $45,000, I continued, my voice perfectly steady. And since Chloe fought so hard to prove she is the legal tenant, she is legally liable for the structural damage caused during her residency. I looked at my sister. The arrogant 22-year-old was completely pale. "So, Mom," I said, "since you aggressively supported her moving in, now I assume you and Dad are ready to write a $45,000 check to the county to clear her environmental liability?" A dial tone cut through the speaker. My mother had hung up. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked at Chloe. 7 minutes, I said. The remaining 7 minutes dissolved into pure, unfiltered panic. The interior of the cabin became a chaotic obstacle course. The arrogant, untouchable energy that had fueled their month-long mountain party was completely gone, replaced entirely by the terrifying reality of a ticking clock and a county deputy holding a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. I didn't move from the front porch. I leaned against the cedar railing, pulling my wool coat tighter against the freezing mountain fog, and watched the exodus. A guy in a backward baseball cap shoved past me, carrying a plastic storage bin overflowing with tangled clothes, loose electronics, and a spilled ashtray. 2 girls followed close behind him, or struggling to carry a heavy cooler over the threshold. They didn't look at me. They didn't say a single word. The illusion that I was just an annoying older sister they could bully had been completely shattered by the bright orange "condemned" sticker, currently plastered to my front door. Chloe was the last one out. She stumbled onto the porch, dragging a massive, hard-shell designer suitcase behind her. She was still wearing my silk bathrobe over her clothes, her hair a messy tangle from sleeping. She looked down at the dark mud caking the wooden deck, then looked out at the front lawn. "Guys, wait!" Chloe shrieked, her voice echoing into the dark tree line. "Pop the trunk! I have 3 more bags inside!" Nobody answered her. They were already sprinting across the wet grass toward the 8 vehicles parked haphazardly across the front of my property. But as the first engines roared to life, the reality of what they had actually done to my land finally materialized. The guy in the backward hat jumped into a leased white BMW SUV. He slammed his vehicle into reverse and hit the gas. The heavy engine revved aggressively, but the car didn't move backward. Instead, a thick, sickening sound of wet suction echoed through the freezing air. The rear tires spun wildly, violently kicking up massive arcs of dark, foul-smelling sludge across the doors of the adjacent cars. "Stop spinning the tires, Jason. You're spraying my car." a girl screamed from the driver's seat of a Honda Civic parked a few feet away. She threw her own car into drive, desperately trying to pull forward toward the gravel driveway. Her front tires instantly dug into the earth. The front bumper dipped sharply downward as the heavy engine block dragged the chassis deep into the compromised soil. Within 60 seconds, the entire lawn was a chaotic symphony of revving engines, spinning rubber, and shouting. Not a single vehicle had moved more than a few inches. They hadn't just parked on a damp lawn. They had parked 20 tons of metal directly on top of my custom-engineered rural septic leach field. The combined weight of 8 heavy vehicles sitting there for a month had completely crushed the subterranean PVC distribution grid. The earth beneath their tires wasn't solid ground anymore. It was a collapsed, spongy sinkhole saturated with raw human waste and compromised mountain groundwater. The more they hit the gas, the deeper they buried their own axles into the biohazard. "Turn the engines off, Mr. Vance's voice cut through the noise with the sharp, uncompromising boom of a county official who had seen this exact scenario 100 times. The inspector walked off the porch, shining his high-powered tactical flashlight directly into the eyes of the panicked drivers. Then the bright beam illuminated the thick, dark mud caking the wheel wells of the luxury cars. "Shut them down and step out of the vehicles," Vance ordered, pointing his flashlight at the BMW. "You have compromised the structural integrity of a Class 3 septic zone. You are actively churning raw sewage into the surface topsoil. Turn the keys off right now." Jason, the guy in the BMW, killed the engine and kicked his door open. He stepped out, on his expensive sneakers sinking instantly into 3 inches of foul-smelling sludge. He gagged, pulling his shirt up over his nose as the intense stench of the ruptured septic tank hit him. "What the hell is this?" Jason yelled, looking frantically from his ruined shoes to the inspector. "We need to get out of here. The cop said we have 3 minutes before we get arrested." Deputy Miller walked slowly down the porch steps, his hands resting casually on his heavy utility belt. The mandate was to vacate the condemned structure and the immediate premises, Miller corrected smoothly, his voice carrying easily over the idling engines. It did not include permission to drive contaminated vehicles onto public county roads. Right on cue, the low mechanical rumble of heavy diesel engines echoed up the mountain pass. Through the dense morning fog, the headlights of 3 massive, heavy-duty commercial flatbed tow trucks pierced the darkness. And they weren't standard city wreckers. They were specialized environmental recovery units, painted bright industrial yellow and equipped with heavy hydraulic winches. The drivers inside the cabs were wearing high-visibility reflective gear. The lead truck pulled horizontally across the base of my gravel driveway, completely blocking the only exit to the mountain highway. The air brakes hissed loudly as the massive vehicle came to a halt, and the amber strobe lights on the roof bathed the ruined lawn in a rhythmic, warning glow. Chloe stood frozen on the porch, her hands gripping the handle of her designer suitcase. "Harper, what is that? Why are there tow trucks?" "Because you can't just drive a biohazard down a federal highway, Chloe," I stated calmly, walking down the steps and stopping on the solid gravel of the driveway, safely away from the septic sinkhole. Mr. Vance clicked his pen and stepped forward, only addressing the group of terrified 20-somethings standing ankle-deep in the mud. "Under Section 402 of the County Health and Safety Code," Vance explained, reading directly from his clipboard, "any mechanical equipment or vehicle submerged in or exposed to an active biological waste spill must be extracted by a certified environmental recovery team to prevent the contamination of public infrastructure." Jason stared at the massive flatbed trucks, his face completely pale. "Extracted? What does that mean for my car?" "It means my team isn't going to let you drag raw sewage onto the asphalt," a deep voice called out. The lead tow operator, a burly man named Mike wearing a thick canvas jacket and heavy rubber boots, walked up the driveway holding a digital tablet. He looked past the kids and made direct eye contact with me. "Ms. Ashford?" Mike asked. "That's me," I confirmed, stepping forward. "We got your dispatch from the county portal," Mike said, handing me the tablet. "We brought 3 Class B extraction winches. We'll have to pull them out backward onto the gravel to avoid tearing up the rest of the root system. I need the property owner's signature to authorize the removal of unauthorized vehicles from a condemned site." I took the stylus and signed my name on the digital line without a single second of hesitation. "Wait!" Jason shouted, abandoning his car and jogging toward the driveway, his ruined shoes squelching loudly with every step. "Or you can't tow my car. I have the keys right here. I'll drive it out really slow." Mike took the tablet back from me and looked at Jason with absolute exhaustion. "Son, if you turn that ignition again, the county is going to impound the car and fine you $10,000 for illegal dumping. Hand me the keys." "Where are you taking them?" the girl from the Honda asked, her voice trembling as she realized she was stranded on a freezing mountain at 5 in the morning. "The county environmental impound lot down in the valley," Mike answered, pulling a stack of pre-printed carbon copy receipts from his jacket. "The standard municipal biohazard recovery fee is $1,200 per vehicle, payable strictly up front before release, plus $150 a day for the storage fee while the undercarriage gets pressure washed by the hazmat crew." The silence that followed was absolute. $1,200 for 8 cars. And the reality of the financial devastation finally broke the spell. The group of friends who had spent the last month drinking my liquor, destroying my furniture, and laughing at my expense slowly turned their heads toward the porch. They all looked at Chloe. $1,200? Jason repeated, his voice dropping into a dangerous, furious register. He marched through the mud directly toward the cedar deck, pointing a finger at my sister. "You told me this was your family's house. You told me we were legal tenants. You said your sister was just a corporate pushover who couldn't legally touch us." Chloe took a step backward, her arrogant posture completely collapsing under the weight of 8 angry, stranded people. "Jason, back off. I didn't know the septic tank was going to break. I have a piece of mail. I thought we had squatters' rights." "Squatters' rights?" the girl in the hoodie screamed, throwing her duffel bag onto the muddy grass. "Weren't you forged a residency claim to steal a cabin, and now my car is being seized by a hazmat team? I don't have $1,200, Chloe. You are paying for my tow." "I'm not paying for anyone's tow," Chloe shrieked defensively, pulling her phone out of her pocket with shaking hands. "This is Harper's fault. She called the county. She set us up." "I didn't force you to park on a drainage field, Chloe," I noted evenly from the driveway. "Or I just refused to interrupt you while you were making a mistake." Chloe practically hammered her screen, dialing our mother on FaceTime. The call connected almost instantly. "Mom!" Chloe wailed into the phone, tears of sheer panic finally spilling over her cheeks. She held the phone up, panning the camera wildly across the flashing lights of the police cruiser, the massive tow trucks, and the furious faces of her former friends. "Mom, you have to do something. Harper brought a hazmat team. Oh, they are seizing everyone's cars. Jason is threatening to sue me. Tell Harper to stop it right now." "Harper Elaine," my mother's voice shrieked through the speaker, amplified by the morning silence. "What is wrong with you? Call those trucks off immediately. You are terrorizing your sister. I am calling your father, and we are going to hire a lawyer to sue you for an illegal eviction." Deputy Miller, who had been quietly watching the implosion from the base of the porch, I finally stepped forward. He didn't yell. He simply walked into the frame of Chloe's phone camera, his silver badge gleaming under the flashing lights. "Ma'am," Miller said, his voice projecting a heavy, uncompromising authority directly into the FaceTime call. "This is Deputy Miller with the Blue Ridge County Sheriff's Office. You are currently on an active body cam recording." My mother's hysterical screaming stopped instantly. "I'm advising you to carefully consider your next words," Miller continued, his tone entirely flat. "Your daughter is currently standing in the epicenter of a Class A biological contamination zone caused by massive structural negligence. The vehicles are being seized under county health mandates. If you attempt to formally claim legal residency or financial responsibility for this encampment, the Department of Environmental Health will add your name to the $45,000 commercial excavation lien that is being drafted as we speak." Miller paused, letting the sheer terrifying weight of the county bureaucracy crush the life out of my mother's enabling arrogance. "Would you like me to take down your full legal name and billing address for the environmental fine, ma'am?" the deputy asked. Through the phone speaker, I heard a sharp intake of breath, and the woman who had spent 22 years defending Chloe's every catastrophic mistake suddenly found herself staring down the barrel of a massive, unpayable government debt. "No," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. I have nothing to do with that property. Chloe is an adult. She makes her own decisions." The FaceTime call abruptly disconnected. The screen went black. My mother had just abandoned her favorite daughter on a freezing mountain to save her own bank account. And the screen of Chloe's phone went black, reflecting only the rhythmic flashing of the amber strobe lights from the tow trucks idling at the end of the driveway. The silence that followed our mother's abrupt hang-up was absolute. The safety net that had caught Chloe every single time she fell for 22 years had just vanished. Faced with a $45,000 environmental liability, our parents had instantly severed the cord to protect their own bank accounts. Chloe slowly lowered the phone. Her hands were shaking violently. She looked at the 8 people standing around her in the freezing mud. People she had promised a free month-long mountain vacation. They were no longer looking at her as the generous host. They were looking at her as a massive, walking financial liability. Jason broke the silence. He zipped up his heavy jacket and hoisted a plastic storage bin onto his shoulder. He didn't look at his sinking BMW. He looked straight at my sister. "I am not paying a $1,200 hazmat fee for a house you didn't even have the right to be in, Chloe," Jason said, his voice dropping into a cold, furious register. "You told me your sister was just a pushover. You told me you had legal residency. You have exactly 1 week to send me the money for my impound release, or I am taking you to small claims court. Do not text me. Do not call me." He didn't wait for her to respond. He turned his back on the porch, in his ruined sneakers squelching through the dark sludge, and started walking toward the gravel driveway. "Jason, please," Chloe begged, her voice cracking as she stumbled down the cedar steps. The hem of my silk bathrobe dragged through the raw sewage. "My mom just cut me off. I don't have a car. You can't just leave me here." Jason didn't even turn his head. He just kept walking. The rest of the group followed his lead. The girl in the gray hoodie grabbed her duffel bag, was shooting Chloe a look of pure disgust before joining the exodus. One by one, they abandoned their luxury vehicles to the heavy yellow tow trucks and began the long hike down the steep, winding mountain pass toward the main highway. The mechanical whine of the hydraulic winches roared to life. Thick steel cables pulled taut, dragging the heavy SUVs backward out of the collapsed septic field. The tires carved deep, ugly trenches into the ruined lawn, and leaving behind nothing but churning mud and the overwhelming stench of the biohazard. Deputy Miller rested his hand on his utility belt and checked his watch. He stepped onto the edge of the driveway, shining his tactical flashlight directly at Chloe. "Ms. Ashford," Miller said, his voice a flat, uncompromising line of law enforcement authority. "The 10-minute grace period has expired. The property is officially condemned and closed to all unauthorized personnel. Now grab your belongings and step off the perimeter." Chloe stood frozen in the mud. She looked at her massive, hard-shell designer suitcase sitting on the porch. It weighed at least 60 pounds. She looked at the dark tree line, the freezing morning fog, and the desolate road ahead of her. Then she looked at me. Her arrogant, TikTok-educated persona was completely gone. She was just a terrified, freezing kid who had finally hit a wall she couldn't manipulate. "Harper, please," Chloe whispered, and her voice trembling so hard her teeth chattered. Tears streamed down her face, cutting through the dirt on her cheeks. "I can't walk 10 miles in the dark. I'm wearing a bathrobe. My boots are locked inside the house. Just give me a ride to the gas station. I'll never come back here again, I promise." I stood leaning against the side of my truck. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at the massive bonfire pit they had built dangerously close to my dry timberline. The crushed septic field and the bright orange condemned sticker slapped onto my front door. "You aren't a stranded traveler, Chloe," I said quietly, my voice carrying easily through the cold air. "You are the primary legal resident of this address. You fought very hard to prove that to the sheriff, and residents are responsible for their own transportation." I opened the door to my truck and climbed into the driver's seat. "Harper, wait!" she screamed, lunging toward the gravel. I shut the door, cutting off the sound of her voice. I started the engine, turned the heater on, and shifted into drive. As I slowly pulled out of the driveway, giving a wide berth to the massive tow trucks, I looked in my rearview mirror. Chloe had finally grabbed the handle of her heavy suitcase. The small plastic wheels instantly jammed with mud and sewage, forcing her to physically drag the dead weight across the gravel. She was sobbing into the freezing morning fog, beginning her long, miserable descent down the mountain alone. I drove down the pass, completely untouched by the chaos. Over the next 4 months, the county bureaucracy executed a masterclass in financial devastation. Chloe's brilliant squatters' rights loophole became her absolute ruin. Because she had successfully used her mail to establish herself as the primary legal tenant of the cabin on police body cam footage, the Blue Ridge Department of Environmental Health legally bound her to the structural damage. They formally issued a commercial excavation and remediation lien directly against her Social Security number for exactly $45,000 to replace the Class 3 septic grid. When the county mailed the invoice to our parents' house, my mother and father panicked. They consulted a lawyer, one who reviewed the body cam footage and informed them that if they attempted to pay a portion of the fine or legally intervene, the county could attach the environmental liability to their suburban estate. To protect their own retirement accounts, my parents completely cut Chloe off. They refused to let her move back home, completely abandoning their golden child to the municipal code. Without their money, Chloe couldn't pay the county fine within the 30-day window. But the state executed a hard freeze on her bank accounts and obliterated her credit score. She couldn't rent an apartment, lease a car, or even open a basic utility account. The self-proclaimed content creator was forced to take a minimum wage retail job, renting a tiny room in a crumbling basement apartment just to survive her wage garnishments. Her former friends showed no mercy. And the environmental impound lot down in the valley charged $1,200 per vehicle for the biohazard extraction, plus $150 a day for storage. None of them had the liquid cash to pay the upfront fees. Within a month, the county seized all 8 vehicles and auctioned them off to cover the storage costs. Jason and the others sued Chloe in small claims court, winning default judgments because she couldn't even afford a bus ticket to show up to the hearings. When she was completely alienated from everyone she knew. My commercial property insurance covered the entire cost of the septic replacement, citing the police report and the county condemnation order as proof of extreme third-party vandalism. I hired a specialized excavation crew to install a massive, reinforced drainage field and a biohazard team to deep clean the interior of the cabin. I installed a solar-powered, heavy-duty steel gate at the base of my driveway with a biometric scanner, worse than a comprehensive perimeter camera system. They thought they had discovered a brilliant internet loophole to steal a free summer home. They thought I was a pushover who would suffer through a 6-month civil eviction just to keep the peace. They completely forgot that a commercial zoning consultant doesn't argue with squatters. I just let them bury themselves in their own toxic waste and let the county health department hand them the bill. If your entitled sibling copied your keys, so you moved their friends into your cabin and tried to claim squatters' rights to steal your property, would you have called the county health department to condemn the house, or would you have just gone through the slow civil court process to keep the family peace? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of absolute paper trail justice, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.